Hey, Franco, I'm going to put on a little intro and share it. We're live on Facebook now. Let me just put on this little 1-minute intro and give some people time to come in, and I'll pull you up on the screen. Just 1 second. Let me just make sure we're clear on this. Get out of here and get Franco up here and see what's happening. All right. Hey, Franco.
Hello. Finally, I get to have my microphone activated. There we go.
Oh, wait a minute. My speaker just went out.
Okay, just make sure I got everything on track here. Good.
How's that? Better?
Yep.
Okay, now I got sound. Okay.
Great.
So what's going on?
Well, lots of exciting things on my end. I was wondering if you had something amazing to share on your end too.
Yeah, always. There's always something going on. Like how to use this equipment.
Yes, you've been moving around, so you have to keep setting up. So you're using different equipment again?
Yeah, I'm not sure if. Say something.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, yeah, I'm actually at a friend's house, very dear friends of ours, and we met 3 years ago when I left Houston and said to hell with everything, and I'm going to go do this. And I met him and his wife, and anyway, we just saw each other. It was that soul recognition that you've talked about.
Mm-hmm.
And so, come full circle, January 2nd of 2019, I came out of a 19 days of sickness, and I said, I'm doing this. We're doing this. And I went on YouTube and Facebook. I said, we're going to make this happen. And of course, it didn't. The network didn't get any traction, and we just couldn't pull it together. But now we're working on it, and we're really close to making it happen, and in a way that I never thought would happen for a long time. So it's not just being able to do it, but it's being able to do it independent. So
right.
Today was a good day. We had he made some great progress today. So anyway, he's got a nice setup here, and he said, why don't you just do some of the shows here when we're not in the office? So here we are.
Yeah, it's good. And it's, the video is really good quality. Lighting is pretty decent too. So yeah, it looks good.
Well, I think this is where we're headed in the Soulogy world.
Right.
I think, and to be able to, I don't want to get into it too much, but to be able to create a template for other people to create their own channels, and using the template that my dear friend's setting up for us. So
Yeah, that would be perfect.
Yeah.
And I guess you would share the viewers too and all of that, or is it? I know I talked to somebody a few years ago actually, and that's what they had done is they set up a template for everybody to have their own shows, but I think everybody shared the same audience or something like that, and then whoever was drawn to it would
Yeah.
get involved or something
Well,
of that nature.
I think I've always seen it as a combination of a Facebook, YouTube, Wikipedia, like all combined, and a traditional webpage all combined into one. But as far as the dream goes, it's anyone would be able to go in and do their own live, bring their own following. Everything is transparent. All information is transparent. All contributions are transparent. The dispersion of the contributions are transparent, and they're done proportionate to the viewership.
Yeah, perfect.
So, and then it's not encumbered by getting strikes from YouTube or being suppressed at Facebook, which we've been dealing with for quite some time. So yeah, it's exciting. I'm a little excited. Can you tell?
Yes.
You look good.
I like your excitement.
Yeah. Well, I used to get too excited, so now I'm trying not to get so excited. But yeah, it's a
Well,
good time. And today is a powerful day. The 3rd was a powerful day. On or about the 3rd, Morgan and I had another I don't know, almost like a climax type of no pun intended with the dragons. The dragon energy came in, and it was really interesting because they didn't come in the form they normally did or have, with color and different colors and just different attributes. They came in and it was almost like a silhouette, and inside the silhouette it was a form.
Right.
And it was 2 of them, and they merged with us, and they told us that they were master dragons, and they told us that they had actually been a part of the original reptilian group, but that they as a group within that group had chosen to do their shadow work, had chosen to take responsibility for what their experience and creations were, and that they kept going through millions and millions of years and finally reached a mastery level. And they basically said, we are transformers, and you now have this available to you, which, as the individual or the couple goes, I'm assuming it goes that way in the collective. So that energy is available, which is exciting too, as we head into 2020.
Yeah, absolutely. Perfect timing too. Well, I guess everything is so well orchestrated anyways, because it just looks at the different energies.
Sorry, keep going.
Okay. It looks at the different energies that, not only the collective, but where people are at, and then just kind of aim in those directions and say, okay, now we can unfold. And this is why you got the master ones versus the ones that you've experienced in the past, because not only is the playground's energy increased and being streamed in a much more powerful way, but you also have been going through changes with Morgan and so forth with everything that you've been doing. So you're ready to get to the next level and meet the masters now, and activate the transformer part of it. The transforming is really basically a complete transmutation of anything that we've had before, and that's what we're doing now. From anything that we've ever played as what we realize is the human game and the human physicality and the human protocol and operating system, we've come here really at this point in time with our own work and whatever else that we're doing to really transform it completely. Yeah. So in doing so, we're like the dragons that shared with you, they worked on themselves and so forth, and over a long period of time, and were able to access a more refined state of themselves as a source essence, expressing through what we can call a reptilian type of physicality. In this case, a dragon type physicality and so forth. I mean, the physicality is just a representation of what particular energies that they're working with and what they find comfortable with. But in essence, I mean, the baseline is we're still source essence, and within the source essence, well, that exists in all levels, and this is why even the dark fields and forces that people talk about, it's still latent with the same energy in a sense. It just chooses to play a particular role and to tune down the creation aspect of, because when you're a creator aspect, when you're in a state of constant evolution, constant upgrading, constant expansion and so forth, you're basically using the highest spectrums of light. So that facilitates. Now, the only reason the dark would want to play a dark role is, again, to facilitate the light in a way. But what they've had to do is actually cut off as much as the light as possible and use the very lower spectrums of that frequency, so that they're not able to create. In fact, they go to a low enough frequency in some cases, and it's really a small number of that can play that role, because they have to be really prepared for it, is to actually activate a reversal to evolution, to enlightenment. It actually goes through a de-evolving process. Because if you look at it, any form of, like you guys call shadow work, dark, the dark end of it, if you really pay attention to the motive and also the accessibility it has, it always aims towards reversal, towards going back and becoming less and less connected to our essence, so that you actually create a very closed loop. So this is the whole thing. When we had the inverted matrix put in and we had the artificial intelligence called the ego, if you really look at it, all of it was about de-evolution. It was actually regressing instead of moving forward. It was regressing to a less and less evolved state. So instead of removing veils and becoming more and more aware as source essence that you are the master creator, that you lose yourself more and more into the depth of the human experience. But it was a false human experience. It was what we could call a test run, play with this. This is what it meant, but it wasn't really that. So there was no representation of our natural design. Because if you really look at it, Todd, and I know you can appreciate this, is that, the human physicality with the true human blueprint operating system has such a divinity, has such capacity that is mind-blowing in a sense. And even the capacity of planet Earth, which we call Gaia and so forth, the way it was originally designed and how it still holds that integrity within it is amazing. I'm not discounting any other planet, because a lot of planets are very fine-tuned, like specialist store, right? Yeah. So if you go to a store that says, well, we specialize in this particular experience, that's it. But planet Earth was like a Walmart, or what we call maybe that's a bad example.
Smorgasbord.
You basically have all types of things. No master in any of it, but you have a whole encompassing aspect. So you could play on so many levels. So you could really see, especially when the DNA start reactivating, and this is kind of the process we're going through. And then our body goes through that transformation of the crystalline, which is we're all going through already. But once it gets more into that, we step into a state at that point in time where you can now access any capacity of experiencing a physicality, even without having a shape-shifting experience, of any of the 12 different species that make up our physicality, and all of their capacities of what they've learned and their levels of enlightenment and their dimensional state can be all brought in, and you can adjust the mixture so that you can actually create. So the playground just really opens up that, that smorgasbord you talked about. It just opens up more and more and more and more, because it's like, now we're creating more varieties.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because everything that's worked up to now, just recently, is that it's the other way. It's just, even the operating systems of the different organizations and so forth, it was about, including education and everything else, it was about conformity, no variety, everybody following in these little slots, right? And nothing you can get out of those slots. And this is a thing, and this is one of the reasons when you're looking at Facebook, Google, any other services, when you start stepping outside of that, those slots, then you become a disruptor. And we can't disrupt because people are going to notice that that feels more natural than what we're trying to project. So let's stop Todd, because in fact, he's got all these people, these cool people coming in, explaining their stuff that's going on and bringing higher enlightenment. People start to resonate, start to shift in themselves, and then we can't control them anymore. So we gotta do something about it. And this is kind of what's, but the beauty of it all, because of that, we're actually empowering ourselves, because now we're starting to notice the two layers of games. One that's you transforming and becoming much more powerful, and the other part that's holding you back. So you're saying, oh, great, now I'm going to really put my focus, my attention, my energy, and really get into that creator state rather than playing with that. And then this whole thing about the fear of change, the fear of the unknown, starts to melt, because that's all been projected as a way to kind of bind us up and to get stuck into, well, we better stay in the mode because we're going to lose people. If things are going to change, it's dangerous if we don't know exactly what it needs to. And that requires programming, because the childlike part of you that comes in its natural state is about exploration, is about adventure, is about discovery, is about the unknown. It's like, let me play with the unknown. I want to not only know it, I want to just keep going into further and further creation in that capacity, because the unknown has no restriction. The known does, in the sense when we're saying, oh, I better hold on to what I've believed is a life stream of some sort. So that's, you see the big difference with it. So all of it is working out great the way it plays out, but it's for us to really start locking into more and more. What do I choose? Do I choose the old version of reality and the world and how I've experienced my life? Or do I choose to go into that state where it's just a complete open platform? This is why the timeline is situated the way it is right now, because the timeline is not fixed any longer. It's just one open timeline that you can plug in anything you want, because at this point in time, when I say want, what best serves you along the stages, with alignment of the conscious alignment, the soul's alignment, the human entity's alignment, and the physical alignment. It's not just the wants that the ego projects. It's okay, how do I want to experience, plug in any part of my journey here? And you just put it in and you remove whatever you don't. And when you're done with that, you unplug it. So it's not, anything is rigid any longer. And that's all to support us where we're at right now.
That brings to mind, because, a big part of that message with these dragons was the fact that they'd done what we might call shadow work, or taken responsibility as co-creators or manifestors or whatever. And so like what you're saying is it's almost like, when you spend the time shedding this stuff, removing shadow, if we want to call it that, we could also be conscious of what do we want to replace it with, as opposed to knowing something's going to come in and fill that container that's been emptied to a degree. We could actually say, well, what do I want to replace this with that I don't have now, so to speak?
Yeah. And, the thing is, the interesting part of that is not so much empty the container, fill the container. It's empty the container. And in the empty state, you now have a much more broader opportunity to look at, what do I really want to fill the container? It's not like, oh, this looks a little bit better, so I'll pour this out and just instantly pour that in. And a lot of people, what they do, Todd, I'm sure you noticed this. A lot of people, what they're doing, especially when they want to go into manifestation, they're basically looking at other people's lives and say, okay, who's got a better life and what life, whatever. And then they say, okay, I'm going to dump all of this and I'm going to take what other people's lives have been experienced. But, you can do little bits and pieces of that as sampling, but that's not the motive right now. Yeah. The motive is to empty, to really connect with yourself and say, okay, now I'm not going to look at what everybody else is doing. I want to look at what is my expression, what I have come here to fill it with and express it with, and keep that in fluidity rather than, oh, I want that life. and let me plug this in, because that's what everybody projects at this point in time in a lot of programs and so forth that are going on. It's like, oh, the ideal life, and this is the ideal life, and then you dictate the life, and when you look at it, and you say, well, ideal to who? Is it ideal really to you? Is that what you really feel aligned to, or is there something else?
Yeah.
And a lot of times when people say, I don't know what I want, that's like perfect, because that's when you're emptying, and then you go into that still, that 0 point, that neutrality point, and then really discover yourself, and then start putting in that self-discovery into your reality creation, that you start filling that vessel with that essence rather than, so the unknown thing is like amazing. The fact that you don't know who you are anymore is awesome, because it opens the whole thing up.
Yeah.
Because the moment you define yourself, you labeled yourself, you've limited yourself, right? You could do that temporarily, but you have to say, well, I'm not here to hold. When somebody comes to you and says, well, who are you, Todd? You could say, well, this is what I do. Great. But who are you?
Mm-hmm.
I'm an infinite being, constantly creating new realities and exploring and expanding and playing in all different realms. And I have no desire to ever stop, because that is my natural state, to continue to expand. So I am not confined to anything. I'm not even confined in a human male body. Yes, I represent as a male body, but I'm also opening all aspects of the male, female, all portion of that, blend it all in and become a complete little balance of full spectrum. But then even step out of that, and you're not even putting in just the human levels, you're basically opening it up to all different levels of essence and beingness and everything else, right?
Yeah.
That's a whole different way to play when you're coming in from that state, rather than, well, I am this,
Yeah, and I think this is starting to expand too, because of what you've been talking about since we've been doing shows, and I'm sure before that, in regard to how this was all set up with the inverted 3D matrix and the true 3D, the 4D, 5D. This is, we've approached this time now. This time has come where it's no longer projecting. And one of the things that also stood out with these dragons was, they said, we're transformers. So we represent a transformational energy within yourself that's available to you. And they actually told us, guided us or directed us, and said, this energy can be utilized internally and externally. But for the next few weeks, and I thought of you because of the timeline that you had laid out with the inverted 3D being turned off, so to speak. I thought of you because I thought, well, that makes sense. It would make sense to me that more and more stuff would be coming up to be revealed to yourself, and they were saying to utilize this energy on yourself first, but also on, which was kind of interesting, also on your gender. So other men for me, other women for Morgan, to look at them as mirrors to further reveal stuff to ourselves to be transformed. And I thought that kind of fell in line with the timelines that you've laid out, which I'm assuming are still the same.
Yes. So everything is still on track for the 21st, switch over from the 21st to the 22nd of December, that the inverted matrix projection will be completed. So the only inverted matrix part that still will be active would be in our operating system, which we call the ego, artificial intelligence. That would be the only thing. So the beauty of all of that is that it's not getting reinforcement any longer. It's not getting supported streaming. So it's not receiving constant streaming and updates. So your ego will be left alone to play with other egos, of course, but to actually, it's not being stimulated. So your capacity to become more connected with yourself and to disable more and more the ego, okay, will become easier to do so.
Yeah.
Now, the reason that the dragons are shared with you for the next few weeks to work on yourself, because right now it's not ready to be put out there because the energies are not conducive for that. That will come in January, about the middle point, around 14th or so, 14 to 16. That's when the energies will be supportive to start to express that more outwardly, what you're doing internally right now. And there's going to be many other people in the world that will do different versions of it and so forth. So this is why they said what they said, because we're going to go into a complete different spectrum of energy and even the spectrum of light. So if you actually pay attention, you will see even the color of the sun will also change a little bit. You will notice it, that it gets to a little more brighter color and less yellowish. In fact, that it may even carry a bit of more of a tinge of a blue in it. Because that spectrum will facilitate what we're going into 2020 and beyond. So right now, a lot of the work, it's still very focused. And December, is an interesting December, because December has its highs and lows, but it's almost like daily. Okay. And you'll notice it. But is it going to be enough to wipe, knock you down on your feet type of thing? There has a possibility, but it's not like November was, or even October or anything of that nature. So it's going to have a little bit lighter feel to it in a sense. But at the same time, it actually allows us to be able, in a sense, to have more incremental pulses, and they're going to be different pulses. This is the beauty of it, because before we would have a high pulse and give you time to integrate and whatever else, and then and it would bring up stuff like emotions, programs, belief systems, anything, right? Or what we can call shadow, whatever you want to call it. But now it's like the intent is to give you almost daily bursts, different ones. So you got one burst down, next burst up, and each one is slightly different. So what it does is actually, you never get into a crash thing, but each one is nudging another aspect of whatever you're still holding as a reference point of yourself and your programming, so that it actually gets to be purged a lot easier in a way. And it can be colorful in a way, because at times if you don't get out of the little burst, but the thing is, it's not going to hit you as hard as before. So it's going to feel more rapid. But at the same time, as less knock you down and trying to grasp your last breath before you have to get back up again, right? So it's a little more gentler in that. And then of course, when we get into January, it's going to feel quite a bit different, and then leading on. So we have a phase between the middle of January till about the end of May. So there's a whole new state that we will access in June. I don't have all the details, but it's going to feel different. And really, if you tune into it, Todd, you will feel there's so much more opening by then. But you already will feel a lot of it going into January and moving along. So there's going to still be a lot of progress and a lot of upgrading and so forth. But it almost seems like you're catching a wind, an energetic wind to make you sail. Now, especially if you've done a lot of work with yourself, you're going to feel much more movement. And then 2020, of course, then at that point in time, your level of service and the interest in the service that you provide will elevate tremendously, because more and more people will be on board and say, okay, many of us have been at this for a long time, and a lot have not, right? But even the ones that have been on the fence back and forth, I do a little bit and go on park for a long time, whatever, are going to find it that once they're in the energies of 2020, that there's kind of a stimulation for movement, a stimulation for them to, I want to be part of this. I don't want to be left behind, sort of thing. And so there's going to be much more interest in that. So you will find that people will seek or look for content and support that will help them elevate a lot quicker.
Yeah. I've noticed and this would probably be over the last week, you know, since we got here. There's been an uptick in you know, in getting the word out there, or attention, or engagements, or something's happened, and it's kind of subtle. And I've seen them happen before, but this one seems to be different. Like there's no explanation for it. Like for instance, we've been getting suppressed on Facebook for months. Then all of a sudden, it's like everything's aligned. I don't know. It's just like somebody opened up a gate, and yeah, so that's been interesting too. And the other thing that I found really interesting, not just with the dragon energy, but as an example, after that episode, Morgan put up a post. Now that's a pretty unique topic, but the amount of people that engaged that post and specifically spoke about dragon experiences, most of them very recently, was very impactful. So I'm assuming that energy is a very, very powerful energy, and obviously a very good sign for us as we move forward.
Yes, yes, and I'm glad you brought that point, because I was going to bring that up too. But you'll always notice the suppression and the holding back. In many cases, if you hit a certain vibrational frequency, they open up, so they get out of your way, sort of thing. So the holding you back and so forth that you've been experiencing, like you said, even with Facebook and other access, will be reduced, or is being reduced, already is reduced actually, and will reduce even more. So there's going to be less interference per se. But also this energy that we're going into December, there already people are feeling it, that, okay, the way I am right now, I need to really look into things. So even if they wanted to look at your shows, there's been enough polarity stuff kicking them in the ass, sort of thing, that even if their intent was to watch, or to be involved, or to discover something, or to learn something from it, or to remind themselves of something, there's been so much for them that they almost feel like they couldn't make it. But now that's easing off. So now some of the intent that they had, they're finding it a little bit easier to be able to connect. So, and plus, like you said, with there's been quite a bit more interaction with different beings and different representations with people. And so that is kind of all bringing people together, and it's great when, you know, something like that is shared, because then people don't feel alone, and they, oh, okay, great, you know, I had this experience, and let's talk about it, let's share it, because I don't understand it yet, right? You may have a deeper understanding because of, you know, a lot of the work that you've been doing, but then there's a lot of people that really would feel so much more at home to discuss some of the things that they've been experiencing.
Yeah, it's funny. We met we met this lady right after we got here, and this was, I think, it may have been before this particular this last dragon experience, and we mentioned it. Somebody mentioned it, and she said, "Oh yeah, I just met mine." Yeah, and she went in to describe it to the T, and how basically they merged, I guess, and she got on its back, and they went flying around, and messages were given, and that type of thing. The other thing that happened is last Sunday, we're going to do it again this Sunday, by the way, we sat down with a 27-year-old who you probably could have fathered, who has been quiet, who's been on the path since he was 12 years old. And we had this show right here. And, you know, it started 30 people, 40 people, 50 people, went up to 70 people. Now this is live. Gets up to about 155, 160, 165 people, and nobody left the room, you know, and it just blew up on YouTube, blew up on the Facebook replays. His information was similar to yours from a different perspective. He's been doing a lot of this stuff since he was 12. Now we're having the show about 10 minutes into it, and I heard a big thud, and I looked behind me, and there was a bunch of golden beans with triangular heads, with slanty eyes, and two big, tall blue beans. People in the audience were seeing it. Some people were mentioning it. But I think this is what you're referring to, and I guess that's where my question's going. It looks like, you know, from the way the things are going, that we're going to start having more of these experiences and or physically seeing them with our physical eyes as well. Is that in the forecast?
Yes, yes. And again, it would be for the people that are much more comfortable with that and are ready to have those types of interactions. So there's going to be, it's already happening and has been happening for a while, but there's been a little less interaction for the majority of the people in a way. So it's always kind of in a dream state, and a lot of times the dreams are not remembered. But it will become much more in a sense where you will have more physical representation of their presence and a more open dialogue in a sense, because there's a little bit more comfort between the people and also the beings that show up to kind of be in a commonality of sharing back and forth and understanding and so forth. It's not like the way it went for a long period of time. Is like, okay, you're there, you're playing with this, you're quarantined, you can't be part of this because this is something we can't interact with. To the point now, it's like, okay, we're all on track now, we're on the path here, and we're all on the same agenda or same movement. And so how can we assist you? And while we're doing this, we'd like to learn too. So the beings are learning from us.
Yeah.
Because, a lot of the things that we're going through has not been experienced. It's not common in any way, shape, or form. And even the experiment on planet Earth is not common at all. There have been versions of it, but those versions, a lot of them never really made it to the completion to where we are right now. Where, okay, yes, we had intervention. Yes, we've had some assistance in many ways, but it has been more hands-off than we would think. But, to go to a point where we haven't destroyed ourselves and just bringing ourselves to the verge so many times and not going to a point where, what would represent a world war, but it would be a chaotic. It's not even, it's almost like people and would go and just kill other people and destroy things and not even knowing why. It's not like an organized war. It says, okay, those are the enemies, and they tell each other that they're enemies, and now they have to go and take care of their enemies. And for under a story, this would be a chaotic of self-destruction and everything else. And that's been played out in other realms. But what we've experienced here has a uniqueness to it, and it has a very heavy interest by a lot of the beings that have never really saw this. And this is another reason why planet Earth has always been so interesting or interested. There's not many planets out there that that have 7.7 billion participants, or what we can call physicalities. I know a lot of them are extras. Yes, that's true. But representation of those spectrums, because a lot of them are, they don't carry as much, even though some of the planets are much bigger, because they don't need as much. But here it blossomed over the last 60 or 70 years because of the fact of, this is like very interesting. We want to be there. And, I don't think this is going to be replicated again, because as essence, we're advancing so much that I don't think we would even imagine replicating anything of that nature. So if I don't catch this wave, I miss out, right? So that's kind of been the thing. So a lot of the observers that do step in and out, and a lot of the extras really have, are in and out. They have visitors in and out all the time. Because of the fact that it's an open vehicle, and it's like, okay, it's like going to the parking lot and say, well, okay, which vehicle am I going to take today? And I'm going to use that, and then I leave, right? So that's kind of what's been playing out. So yes, you'll find more interaction. Eventually, I mean, we're going to interact in a big way collectively all together, but that's a little bit down the road. But more of the individuals that have prepared themselves or feel that they're open to it and don't have a fear to it, because I mean, you could react in fear, you can react in in a state where, you have to protect yourself or anything of that nature,
Yeah.
or you can be in an interested state, and not only interested, but also in an open state to want to communicate with them. Again, you still maintain your sovereignty. You never give yourself away. You never give your power away, per se. You're not going to say, well, okay, whatever you say, I'm going to do. No, let's talk about it. That's, you share what you have to share. I will share what I have to share. And then I'll still make the final decision how I choose to navigate through this
That's right.
playground.
I'm the boots on the ground.
Yeah.
I don't care who you are.
Yes. And there's high respect for the boots on the ground.
Oh, I think so. And that was another thing that came in, not just with the dragons the other night, but with these beings who actually came again the following night. And it was a celebration mood. I mean, like, they were in celebration, and they were excited. They were partying cosmically, I guess. But the other thing that the dragons told us, and it wasn't, I don't think, the first time a group had told us this, but it was a standout too, and that was, they explained that for everything that we were receiving in terms of, in respect to elevating or expanding or whatever, they were too. And I thought, wow, that's integrating frequencies there, and whether they're coming down and we're going up, or we're just going up, I don't know, but to me, that was a very powerful part of what we went through.
Well, when you look at through their level of perception and understanding, every experience is just an experience. They don't have a right, wrong, good, bad type of experience. So they look at it, and they look at our scenario, situation, and everything that's playing out. There's an interest for it, because it's a quite unique of experience, to even the fact of getting totally lost in the game and totally lost of who we really are in every respect. It's fascinating to be able to do that. It's like going to an amusement park and going on a ride and really losing your own level of grounding because you're on steady ground. Now you're on a coaster that's, has G-force and gravity playing around it in a different fashion. Has a level of excitement, just the fact of having that type of experience within themselves. So, and I guess, of course they learn from us. They also broaden their perspective, because there's parts that we've experienced that they haven't, and then there's stuff that they've experienced we haven't yet. So it's a beautiful dance of the sharing that takes place.
Yeah. And so you're talking about this period, which somebody made the comment that it kind of follows the timeline of what Jason Estes talks about. And again, I think I mentioned her before, Amanda Lawrence, who just put a post out 2 days ago, which speaks in different language, but it's all kind of the same thing. You're saying this period between January, if you had to just kind of overview it, generalize it, between January and May, mid-January and May, what would be the best thing for us to do? Should we put our focus and our efforts? Would it still to continue to work on ourselves, or would we want to also be, if not the priority, or at least equally, or whatever, focus on the changes, as a metaphor, the change in the sun's physicality, the light, or in what's available energetically? I mean, would we be able to see a difference if we pay attention?
You will. If you're not caught up in the mind game, you will notice the difference. You'll feel the difference of the energies around you. You will feel the difference within you. You will feel the difference even when you're outside in the sun and the sun is beaming on you. It's going to feel different. Okay. And how your body responds and so forth is going to feel different. So, but the focus here, yes, you're going to still work on yourself, okay? But you're also going to spend more time, and this is the purpose of spending more time of really discovering yourself, because a lot of the work we've done up to this point in time is to let go of the non-self, all of the adopted perceptional selves that we have programmed ourselves. So we're still going to go through the deprogramming process, but now there's going to be more self-discovery, more of accessing the capacities that we have within ourselves, not only energetically, but our creativity, also our gifts that we have, and so forth. And then also the next part of it is actually being more open to share it. So the representation of the highest aspect of yourself each moment as it goes on starts to be reflective in your playground. So that means wherever you're going. So if you're with family, you're going to be the most genuine part of yourself with the family, with your work environment, with your friends, with your partner, and or whatever, right? So you're not going to create any more the categorization. I'm at work, I'm this, and I'm at home, I'm this, I'm with my family, I'm this. The other thing is, start noticing wherever you are, and if you have a certain facade that you step into, or you go into this role playing wherever you are. Like, for example, you go visit your family, all of a sudden you're role playing. Now you're going to connect more with their culture and this and that, and kind of talk the same talk, act the same way type of thing. The key here for that period of time is to observe it. And at that essence, say, okay, how much of this actually really resonates for me? And I'm going to give myself the opportunity to really go with what I resonate. So that means if any of this stuff doesn't relate with me anymore, which it won't for most people, then I'm going to go to what relates with me. Because look at it this way. The family dynamics, just as one example, and the work dynamics and all the other dynamics too, the family dynamics would like to keep you like them, but they don't. It's not true, because a part of them, the artificial intelligence that operates with them, want this for you to all stay together. So their egos try to play with your ego and keep you all in the same. But their higher aspects of themselves, their truer essence of themselves, really are looking for someone to kind of show them, I can do this without playing this role. And not only that, I get to go and have more variety of experiences. Because if you look at the family dynamic, most of the purpose is to repeat over and over, year after year after year, and decade after decade, and keeping traditions and keeping old, ways of doing things and so forth stagnant. And like, this is it. We all meet at this time. We all do this time. We all talk the same. We support each other. But that's not really the true essence. So you'll notice more and more people will be so not only uncomfortable that they welcome. So all of a sudden you're going to be the breath of fresh air, because now you have chosen to be the more authentic aspect of yourself without all of that. Now doesn't mean that you blow every tradition out of the water, but now you're going to look at everything and you're going to say, how does that relate with where I'm at?
Yeah.
Is it matching? Is it elevating, growing? Is it, like a visit to the past? What is it called? A blast to the past or something like that, as they used to say. It's a nice short little visit, but many of us have been living there for so long that it's like, no, I don't even find any interest going there. So how do I create from there? So I don't need to hold on to the tradition, because traditions have rules, have spectrums of what is acceptable, not acceptable, and what we can or cannot do, and what we all have to do together. So you start looking at it, and then you decide, how much do I participate or don't participate? But that doesn't mean you lose the members. At some point, they may feel a little bit pushed back, but in a way, you're welcomed at a higher level just because you're there. And then even though that you may be quite different than you used to be, they will look forward to your essence, your energy coming in, because you're actually igniting the dormant part of themselves that is really wanting to blossom.
Yeah. No, I can kind of get this. I think we got a little preview of it when we got here. We actually had Thanksgiving. Morgan's never had Thanksgiving. And of course I have, 57 years old. I've had plenty coming from a big Spanish family over the years. And we all know how that goes. And I love this example that you're giving. There's no coincidences. But what was so interesting about this was there had to be, I don't know, 18 people, 20 people from 4 years old to 85. And we just had this non-pretentious, no bullshit, you know, this this get together. And I remember thinking to myself when it was all over, because I spent a lot of my time talking to this 80-year-old man and 85-year-old man who'd had really colorful, full lives in the deep South, you know, but also been around the world, been in the military. But regardless of that, I said to myself, God, that was the coolest Thanksgiving I've ever been to, because quote unquote, everybody was just being themselves. Everybody was comfortable in their own skin. Everybody respected each other. We talked about, I'm Todd. I talked about the type of stuff we talk about, and, and people were open and kind of non-judgmental. It wasn't a perfect, I'm not saying it was utopian, but it was the best thing. And I have to believe that was some kind of preview to the energy that we're actually walking into, all of us.
Exactly. Beautiful example, a beautiful sample that you got.
Yeah. So,
and the thing is too, there's a fascination for one another. This is the other thing that comes in.
Yes.
Instead of being closed down. Okay. So people will have and are already starting to have and have for a little while more interest about finding out about other people's lives and so forth, and how much more expanded it is. It's not looking at it and say, oh, let me see how great your life is versus my life. No, let me understand some of your viewpoints and some of the experiences you've had, so that, I can see how I can add some of that to my own, reality and way I choose to experience things. So that is another part of it that comes into it. The interest, the attention of, wow, okay. And, this is the thing I find with people. And a lot of times when I go to places, it's interesting because people come up to me and say, I don't know, you got a story and I don't even know who you are, but somehow I can sense from you can share something that I don't understand, right? Or something of that nature. And that's happened so many times over. And recently it's been a little bit more often. And so because they feel it and they're open to hear something else, because they feel it's time to shift this particular way of living life that particular individual and various groups are living. So it's like, okay, let's look at other opportunities, other ways of doing it, other perceptions.
Yeah, right on. And we got some big dates coming up, which I know that this is all kind of melding into one continuous moment, right? But the 12/12, and of course, the date you've been calling, which is also the solstice, which is interesting. The 12/12 is the full moon, and it's going to be 12. It's going to be full at 12:12 a.m. Eastern time on 12/12. So I would imagine that's a pretty powerful day. The Schumann resonance today on one of the other shows, somebody said it was up around 155, 160, the highest it's been in 2 years. Is there anything? I know things are getting smoother, but anything we need to be on the lookout for or be abreast of as we move into this 12/12 and the 12/21?
Well, the 12/12 part of it is it's actually quite it's how can I say it? I'm trying to find a word. It's a really powerful alignment. So there's like a stream of energy, and it's going to be bounced off the moon. In the fact, so that's why it's so perfect that the moon is full on that and at that point in time, because it's actually going to use as a reflector at that point. So it's not only reflecting the sun, but this beam is coming from a cluster within the galaxy that it's actually going to target the sun, and the sun's going to have a radiant burst. So if you're in the daytime, you will see an extra light of brightness. You also will notice the Schumann frequency and the electromagnetic field take a burst. So there might be a little bit of disruption within the radio waves, or what you call cellular and stuff like that, on certain times about that. But if it's a nighttime on our part, okay, and wherever we are, then we're going to, we get a less of an impact. It doesn't mean it doesn't spread, but at the same time, the moon's actually used as the deflector, which is very instrumental too in the alignment that has been created, because it will further shut down and there's another word I want to use too, alter the transmission that the moon has been doing, because the transmission is the moon is a satellite, and has as a satellite that actually stimulated the inverted matrix.
Okay.
So the main operating system has been on the moon being transmitted as a satellite to uphold the inverted matrix. So that goes to another level of shutting down, so that the inverted matrix itself gets all completely shut down by the 21st. And so it's a sequence of it. But we will feel, because we have to understand if many of us have noticed that the normal influence that we experienced by the moon has reduced tremendously.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
A lot of people were affected by the cycles of the moon.
Yeah.
You know, women with the menstrual cycle, with growing cycles, with emotions. Imagine, remember, if you recall, I mean, you've probably seen it many times and heard it many times, where people are affected heavily when, we have full moons and new moons and all, especially the full moon part. That's the most powerful.
Yeah, especially if you had some hot Spanish blood running through you.
Yeah.
I blew up many times, but you're right though. It has gotten milder. It's gotten milder. It'll be interesting to see what happens in 2020 with the inverted matrix shut down. What these moons will bring. Will they enhance the true reality, the 5D?
Well, then the moon's role at that point in time won't be to uphold the inverted matrix any longer. It will basically just be there to hold a certain space, and also create the dimmer light for the night light. And because you have to understand, the moon itself, not only does it transmit a particular frequency, that's going to get shut down. And it's pretty well almost all shut down now. It's pretty close to it completely.
Yeah.
But it also reflects the sun. And that's why we see it shine. It's because it's the sun's rays that's deflected. So what it does, because how it reflects off the moon, it produces a different spectrum of sunlight coming down to us, which is gentler and allows us to actually do a lot of repair work and adjustment work at night, because the daylight is very stimulating, very energizing, very renewing, but then you also need the processing time, and the moon will actually be used more of that, because before that part of it was so minuscule, because the amount of energy that was transmitted by the moon to hold up the inverted matrix would normally negate most of that. And that's why we felt the impact, because if you actually look at it, and some of the old writings that go back, there have been discoveries now by scientists. They find, and even a lot of the older traditions talk about the time that the moon was never there. It was when they talk about the time the moon was dragged to the orbit. It was never there before. It wasn't there before 10,000 years ago. It was brought in afterward. It was brought in 10,000 years ago.
I remember reading it was an oral tradition. I don't know if it was what indigenous it was, but I remember them talking about that. It was it's like a fairy tale type of story, but I remember that.
Yeah, and it was the truth, because they basically, and you imagine when those writings were thousands of years ago, okay, and handed down and so forth. So you're looking at it and say, today we're looking at it and we're still kind of, okay, it's starting to make sense. But they talked about it, because they talked about remembering the time there was no moon.
Yeah.
And how things were different. And how things were less chaotic, because they weren't chaotic before that. There was more peace. There was more harmony. There was more unification happening with the beings or the people on the planet at that time. The nature was not volatile. There was no volatility even with the animal kingdom and the various plant lives and so forth. None of that existed until the moon was brought in, the inverted matrix was put in, the artificial intelligence, the ego was put in, and then all the layers and layers and layers and layers of programming on top of that.
Mm.
That has been happening all this time. So prior to all of that, it was a very different time. So what we're doing right now is we're reversing it, but we've got the experience of what it was like, and now we're reversing it.
Man, this is fascinating. I don't know where that hour went. We normally go an hour and a half sometimes, and we've gone 2 hours a couple times. I've got to go somewhere today.
Yeah, no problem.
But 3 people, and I didn't see all the comments, and I apologize. We don't always take a lot of questions, but I like to get some questions of Franco. I wasn't able to get to them all, but we'll get together again. But 3 people made a comment in regards to your seminar. And I won't mention any names. You can look at them in the comments, but I know you just had one again in third week in November. Are you going to have any more? Do you have anything else coming up? And
yes,
anything you might could point people to?
Yes. So if anybody's met, well, okay, the one we had on the 23rd is available, and I will post it, is available for you to get the video and audio recording, the full, complete, and then we actually put in another hour of answering questions, which is a bonus too, that's on there too, because it's like what you just said right now. There was a lot of questions that came in, and because there was so much content in it, okay, we didn't have enough time. So I stayed another hour afterwards that the workshop ended, but some people stayed on and they listened to the rest of it, because I had said we were going to finish around 5:30. We ended up going a little over 6, and then we still kept going until after 7. But at that point, everybody kind of started going off. But about 46, I think it was like 60% of the people stayed on anyways, because they're going to answer questions, so I'm going to hang around. But anyways, those video and audio recordings are available. That is the second part of the trilogy. The first part of the trilogy was October the 5th. So I'm going to put both of them up so that if you missed the first part, and it's all about all of these organic changes that we're going through. So the first one set the foundation. The second one went a little deeper into it and talked about your personal role to be involved in these changes that are going in. The third one that's coming up in January, which I don't have the date for it yet, we're still working all the details out. That is the third part, where we do hands-on work with each other. Of course, we're doing it all online to support ourselves to be able to actually have active and practicing tools to activate and utilize all these changes coming along. So that's available. And I'll also put a third link in, which brings you to the library that has all the different workshops within the last year or so that are all been focused to kind of prepare us for all of these changes that are going on. And there are different topics. You can feel guided to whatever you're going. A lot of it is on my website anyways, but it's I will put the links at as soon as we're done with this.
Yeah, that'd be great. And I want to talk to you. So,
okay.
I might reach out this weekend. We've got to run over to some friends. We're going to help a friend out for the weekend, and I'll try to get some time and reach out to you. But yeah, I'd like to talk to you about what you're doing, what you're getting into, and what I'm getting into, and see what happens.
Yeah, a lot of more exciting things coming up. So yes, we're going to have a blast. One thing I can leave with everybody. And this is the one thing I want to mention. Do not go by expectations of saying, oh, we're going 2020, the world's going to be better. Yeah. You know what it is? 2020 creates us an elevated platform, but it's really up to us what we do with it. But we have the opportunity more than ever to have an amazing, amazing transformation and ride moving forward in such a big way.
Happen. Make that shift happen.
Yes.
Enough of this shift. Let's make that shift happen.
That's
all
right.
All right, man. I'd love to sit here and talk to you. I could do it all night. You know that.
Yes.
I'll see you later.
Take care.
Thank you so much for this show. Best show yet. You take
You're
care.
Welcome.
Put up those links if you would, so everybody can find you.
Yes, absolutely.
All right, brother. I'll see you.